District 28. I'm Meenakshi, your podcast host, and I'm joined with my co-host Akarshak for episode 4 of To Success, a District 98 podcast where we take things the next level. Today, we are joined with a very special guest. The name of today's episode is Mic Drop with Fursey, Mastering Public Speaking. So, no points for guessing that we are joined with Toastmaster for himself.
Fursey is an executive speech coach who has been teaching theater and speech for over 30 years. He has been an educational leader, trainer of trainers, and a TEDx speaker and coach. He has been creating strategies to help people overcome their fears and present themselves with dazzling brilliance. His education includes a BFA and MFA in Fine Arts from Texas University and a master's in educational administration from Lamar State University. Fursey's journey has taken him on multicultural trips around the world, including a 3-year stay in Shanghai, where he taught Shakespeare to students from around the globe. He has worked extensively with students of all ages, ranging from kindergarten to university, creating workshops and presentations that capture the imagination of all participants. His experience teaching speech and theater for over 25 years gives him incredible insight into weaving curriculum, story, and inspiring messages into entertaining presentations dotted with humor and passion. He has participated in Toastmasters Speech Contests and won at many levels in several different categories. He has been a 6-time district champion. So welcome, Fursey, and we are glad to have you on board.
Thank you for having me. District 98? Akarshak? Meenakshi? Hello.
Hello. T8 is one of the biggest districts in India. We comprise of Mumbai, Thane, Gujarat, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh. So these are the states that District 98 belongs to.
Fantastic.
I would like to start to ask you from the background, like your background, right from childhood. Have you always been into speaking? Have you always been an outgoing child that led this public speaking journey?
That's a great question, and I appreciate that question. You know, I wasn't always the most outspoken child. Sometimes he can be really loud, but most times I was a pretty quiet kid. As a matter of fact, there was even a speech contest during 6th grade, and I failed miserably. I couldn't remember the poem that I was supposed to recite. And I always thought all those other people did so well, and I never thought I could do these kinds of things. But there was one little thing I used to do as a kid. I mean, because we're amongst friends here, right? Like it's just the three of us here, right? When I was a kid and I would walk home from school, which was uphill both ways in the snow, because I was in Canada. When I was walking home, I would create dialogue like TV shows and movies. I would create dialogue between this character and that character. So if you saw me walking down the street, you'd probably go, who is that poor child talking to himself? There's something wrong with that child. So I wasn't necessarily loud or exuberant, but I definitely was creating dialogue in my head. So I appreciate the opportunity that Toastmasters has actually given me a place to belong where that seems normal.
I'm reminded of the very famous big speaker, Dale Carnegie. He also had a similar story that he used to travel for work on a horse and he created dialogue in his head. He had these characters built up, and that's how he used to practice sitting on a horse.
There you go. You see, because he got tired of talking to the horse, or actually the horse got tired of talking to him.
Yeah, if I had to summarize that in one word, I would call that eccentric. I'm glad to know someone like you because I think these are the people who make changes in the world and lead things from the front. So we're glad to have you here with that kind of personality. you did speak about Toastmasters, right? How did that start? Because if someone looks at you, you seem to be very confident and they would wonder why Toastmasters.
Akarshak, I think that's an important question when we're talking about Toastmasters, is why we're here in the first place. I know that I got started pretty late in life. I've only been in Toastmasters about 6 years, and it was almost by accident in China. I was talking to someone about something completely different. She found out that I was teaching theater arts to my students and helping them overcome their fear of being in front of a public. And she said, "Oh, I'm part of an organization that does that too." And it turns out it was Toastmasters. And that's what started my journey at Toastmasters. But like you said, I'm pretty good at speaking because I've been doing it for 30 years and I'm a speech teacher. And so people ask me why Toastmasters. I'll tell you something. I'll tell you something that Toastmasters gave me that I didn't get from teaching. I got a community. I think that's the most underrated part of Toastmasters. We are a community of people, not just dedicated to public speaking. We are a community of people dedicated to supporting by creating that positive environment for people to grow, for people to make mistakes. Where else in the world do we have a place that almost invites you to make mistakes so that we can support you and help you grow and help you move forward? That's what makes Toastmasters incredibly unique. And that's why I love Toastmasters.
So I attended a meeting here very recently in a local club, and they used the word laboratory. I mean, that's a very apt word. I haven't really thought of it that way before.
Absolutely. It's a lab. This is a laboratory of art and science, right? Most people, when we think of labs, it's always science. We're measuring, we're calculating. It's very quantifiable. Well, we can do the same thing with ourselves, only we add the artistic part of it. We're creative and we don't always measure things by counting. We are very creative and artistic. We're finding ways to put words together. We're finding ways to use metaphor. We're finding ways to put different forms of language together in such a way that it inspires our audience. And that's an amazing thing.
Absolutely. So, asking more about your journey, how did that sixth grader boy who was talking to himself, making dialogue in his head while walking home from school, get into public speaking? Because you mentioned that Toastmasters came very later on in your life. So, how was that transition from talking to yourself to talking in front of people?
Well, I tell you what, again, I didn't plan it. Things happen to us. And sometimes things happen to us that we did not want to happen. You ever had that? You ever been forced to do something you didn't want to do and you kick and scream and you punch and you're like, "No, I don't want to go to bed right now." And then when you get there, you're like, "Oh, this isn't half bad." Well, that's what happened to me in grade 9. In grade 9, I moved from Vancouver to Houston, Texas. And at my new school, I was upset because life in Vancouver, I was very successful. I was having a lot of fun playing sports, playing football. But you get to Texas and everybody else is much bigger than you are. So football became I can't do this. But they made me take classes in music. They made me take classes in speech. And they made me take classes in theater. Didn't want to do theater and forced me to take theater. Forced me. And then they dragged me into a play. And I said, "Okay, I'll do a play, but I'm not going to do musicals and I'm not going to do Shakespeare." Akarshak, guess what they made me do? And musical. Luckily, they gave me the one role in the musical that didn't have to sing or dance. I was the choreographer. He doesn't sing and he doesn't dance, but he makes everybody else sing and dance. That's how I got started in being in front of the public. I did speech in class, and I don't want to say I enjoyed it. But let's just say everybody else thought I was enjoying it. In theater, that's where all that dialogue I used to have with myself now was useful. Now I could understand dialogue, write scripts, direct script. And that's what led to me being a theater arts teacher for over 30 years. You never know what's going to happen. That's also what makes me proud to be a teacher, is because I think I can look at a kid and see things in that child that other people don't see. I see where there's intuition, where they have gifts besides math, science, language, things that we're taking tests on. I see where they have a potential for brilliance, and I'm going to encourage that. I'm going to encourage that wherever I see it and hope that somewhere along the line, they'll find their path, right? After they've left my class, after they've left my school, maybe I will have said something to them that when they leave, they'll find their path later on in life. Very few kids decide to go into theater out of high school, but maybe they'll find it someplace else. Maybe it's in marketing. Maybe it's in design. Maybe it's in law. Maybe it's as a doctor. That's one of the things I enjoy about being in Toastmasters. Now I get a chance to help people and have immediate. I don't have to wait until after you graduate from college to see the tree grow, right? If I'm planting a seed when I'm a teacher, it could take, well, years before I see that thing sprouting fruit. But in Toastmasters, somebody probably already planted the seed. All I'm doing now is watering it. And then we see the fruit, and it's amazing. Very rewarding.
You reminded me of a Japanese philosophy, the red strings of fate. So you're like the puppet master in Toastmasters who can actually identify what color defines the string of a particular person.
Wow. I'd never heard that. I like that. I'll take that. I thought I was just somebody out there gardening and planting trees and growing forests, but I'll take seeing the threads. I appreciate that.
Speaking of you being a teacher, how has the experience been teaching students from kindergarten? When you work with small children, what is different from working with adults? What has been your experience working with different age groups?
Oh my gosh, it's a whole different world, Akarshak. It is a whole different world. And I can only be in that world for a short period of time. After that, I got to leave it to the professionals. For example, I can direct a show with little children. I can coach them to be better. I can coach them to be very expressive. But in their classroom, learning the alphabet or learning math, I'm way out of my depth. And trying to get the little kids organized, it is so hard. Why do you think I don't have any hair anymore? But there are teachers who go into those classrooms from pre-K, from 2 years old, and they take care of those kids at those young ages. And I don't know how they do it. They're amazing. They're brilliant with it. So I can only be in there for a short period of time doing what I do best. But outside of that, I got to leave it to those professionals to make it. I feel much more comfortable with the older kids, what to do with the time that I give them or with the assignments that I give them. And those are the ones that I really enjoy working with. They get their own momentum. I can leave them alone for a bit. They can process. And then they're like, I got it, Mr. G. I got it. Great. Let's go.
At kindergarten, that age group, they're very easy to mold. Isn't that right?
Well, you have to understand them. I mean, what were you like? Meenakshi, what were you like when you were that young? I bet you were a terror, weren't you? Well, you were probably pretty nice. I bet Akarshak was a terror. Oh my gosh. I bet he was climbing on the roof.
No, actually, you couldn't be more wrong. I was one of the quietest kids and I was the one who was bullied all the time.
Oh, okay. So that means it was Meenakshi that was doing the bullying.
Yeah, quite possible.
I think that's the importance of something like Toastmasters, that we have such a positive attitude. You find that when you go to meetings, when you go to conferences, there's such a positive energy. And that's a beautiful thing.
Speaking of Toastmasters, a lot of our listeners from District 98 have their once in a lifetime goal to be on the TEDx stage. What do you have to say to all of them listening here today?
I think that's an admirable goal. And being up there on the world championship stage was a wonderful thing for myself. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a big crowd. They told me it was over 1,700 people. That's the big room, right? Even the semifinalists don't get a room that big. It was the big house. And it was just an absolutely wonderful experience. But I know that there's going to be other ways to impact my space. We all live in different spaces. And I think one of the most important things is that we understand how we impact the space that we are in. What I mean by that is you can impact a space of 1,500, and that's terrific. But if you can't go back home and impact your child or your mother or father, then what have you really achieved? I want to make sure that people can be impactful in whatever space they are in. They don't have to be on the big stage to make use of these wonderful things that we call communication skills. Simply by listening, we can be so impactful. We can do so much in our neighborhoods, in our communities. We can do so much as a mentor, as a leader. We value leadership that is based on listening skills. So I think we as Toastmasters should find a way to honor that. I think the mentor of the year should be as big a prize as world champion of public speaking, because I think it's possible that the mentor of the year has impacted more people, the world champion of public speaking. I would rather be known as a good speaker, but I would really rather be known as being a good mentor and a good teacher and being a good farmer and grower of other speakers and people who have found their lives and their voices through Toastmasters.
I remember I was sharing the stage once with my mentor, and we were both giving speeches. I ended up winning. It was a sense of pride for me as well as my mentor because, I learned everything from him. And then I'm actually incorporating those teachings in my speeches. So I actually felt amazing that day. And so was he. And I'm glad that we get to experience such a feeling. Speaking of your experiences on the stage, do you have a rule book that you follow? Are there any do's and don'ts? How do you go about structuring your speech to maintain such an audience in front of you?
Oh, man, that's the magic question, isn't it? I could answer that here, but then no one would come to me for private coaching. No. I think there's something very important that every speaker has to go through on their journey. If you want to get to be a world champion, if you want to be hired as a trainer or a career as a public speaker, you have to understand one very important equation. You have to go, and it's a transformation. You go up on that stage, you take that microphone, you become the world's greatest storyteller because you're telling your story. We cultivate that in our meetings. You're going through pathways, you're learning to take stories from your life, but if you want to be truly effective, the transformation has to go from me to we. What's in it for your audience? Whatever life experiences you're talking about has to be transferred to your audience for them to say, your story is our story. Your story is my story. They have to be able to take ownership of the learning that they make from your story. And as a speaker, that's what you have to do. You have to go from me, this is about me, to this is about we. And it can't just be the last 30 seconds of your speech. You can't talk about yourself for 6.5 minutes and then at the last minute go, how about you, audience? Has this ever happened to you? Back to you, contest chair. No, you got to bring your audience into it much sooner than that. Why? Because you got about 30 seconds after you open your mouth before your audience starts looking at their phones. Prove me wrong. Go into an audience and look up and down the aisle. You will see everybody on their phones. It's so difficult to hold an audience today. But that's where 30 years as a teacher has taught me so much, because they do get distracted by everything else. They get distracted by their phones. They get distracted by their boyfriend or girlfriend or the other girlfriend or the other boyfriend, or who everybody says is their boyfriend but is not. They get distracted by what's for lunch or what's going to happen tonight. So you have to let them know that whatever's coming out of your mouth is important for them. And it can't just be forced. It has to be subtle. You have to strike at their curiosity. You have to pinpoint on a point of inquiry. And that's what brings the audience out. That's what makes the audience put their phone down, because now what you're talking about is so compelling and immediate to their needs that they find it important. That was one of the important things I was doing in my finals speech. Everybody knows that I'm on the chair, I'm sideways, and I'm pretending to be on the side of a mountain with fear of height. But somebody could easily say, I've never gone on a mountain. I don't have a fear of heights. Right, but that wasn't part of it. What this is really about is helping those who have failed, helping those who are miserable, helping those who need our help. And that's why I think the most critical part of that speech is when I knock the chair over and say, that's your best friend. That's your son. That's your daughter. What are you going to do to help them? That's the person sitting next to you, quietly suffering. Everybody has somebody in their life who is suffering, and they're probably quietly suffering. And they may not want help. How do we help them? You know, they don't want us just yelling at them. I'm already suffering. Why are you yelling at me? I think that's one of the most critical parts of going from me to we, helping people understand this is important to all of us.
About what you said, having a very grabbing opening within the first 30 seconds so that everybody's attention is to your speech. What is something that we can do today to implement that in our regular Toastmasters meetings or our upcoming contest?
Sometimes people ask yes/no questions. And there are those who are experts that will say yes/no questions are the best ones to go because it immediately brings people in. It's very easy to engage. I think it's important to have a follow-up question or to skip the binary question and jump straight to the heart of it. Instead of saying, how many of you have children? And then some will go yes, some will go no. Instead, go with, imagine a child not knowing if they are loved. If you're asking how many of you have children, and then, oh, did the child love you? Or I was a kid, go for a way to measure. Go for a way to judge creatively. That's what I mean by a point of inquiry. Find a point of inquiry that makes us go, oh, go to that second or third level question. Go to that second or third level question so you're digging deeper. And make sure that the audience knows, I'm going to come back to this. I want to bring you into it. You know, this is going to be a dialogue. I know that's hard because a speech is one person talking. But what do you think is happening in that moment of silence? In that moment of silence, you're saying, I'm going to stop talking so you can think.
I can say this verbally because the audience listening in will not know this. When you were speaking, we were pretty much into that moment. Like we reacted, you were reacting, us. Like we had this moment which we can't hear. And this moment of silence is something which we appreciate more going forward because of what you have taught us today.
This moment of silence was actually the two of us sitting in awe.
Well, thank you. And here's the thing, all of us can do it. Every single one of us can. It's not a secret. You know, it's not only Fursey can do it. So go for it. Use that moment of silence. And that's going to bring your audience to you. Sometimes, because I learned this teaching, again, learned all this stuff from kids. If you want to get all those kids to listen to you, don't try to yell over them. It just gets louder. Instead, get very quiet. They'll pay attention because they're all like, what's wrong? What's going on? You know, they'll put their phone down, and whoever is talking is all of a sudden going to hear their voice, and they go, oh, everybody can hear me. All of a sudden, they're going to get very focused. I would do that as a principal at my last school. There'd be 600 kids in the auditorium, 600 kids in the theater, and I had to start it. And I wouldn't go, hey, quiet, quiet, quiet. No, you just stand there, and they would whoosh. And I would count. I would count the seconds in my head, and I would tell them, that took 5 seconds. That took 3 seconds. And I would tell, hey, that's good. We're getting better. It took 3 seconds. 600 kids, quiet in 3 seconds without me getting angry. Silence
I
is
think
powerful.
most people would think that it's actually the loudest people who make people uncomfortable, but it's actually the most silent ones because you never know what they're thinking. They could be coming up with any strategy to, attack you with that. I mean, not
You nailed it,
literally,
Akarshak.
of course.
You nailed it. Those are the people that make you most uncomfortable. That and your mother-in-law.
Even in parts of the speech, it's the pauses and the silences where you make the maximum impact.
Absolutely, Meenakshi. Absolutely.
So, firstly, you want to share your experiences and learnings from contests and how do we incorporate those? I mean, you've already given us some strategies, but you have been part of many different contests across the globe in Toastmasters and beyond. So, anything that you would like to give back to the audience today, how do they go about it?
You have to practice. I mean, practice and 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 practice even when you don't feel like, even when you're like, oh, I feel awful today. That's the best time to practice because sometimes on the day of the contest, you're going to feel awful. No one says that the flu is going to go away from you on contest day. No one is going to say that on the day you have to present at work to your boss that you're going to have perfect environment. You're going to be sick. You're going to wake up late. You're going to lose sleep at night because your baby's kept you up all night. Now you got to go into work and do it, So practice even when you feel awful. Practice table topics even when you have no idea what the prompt means. Practice your speaking and practice it in different ways. Don't get into a rhythm where I know exactly what I'm going to say every single time and it's the same thing. And I'm kind of bored with my own speech. Because if you're bored with your speech, imagine what your audience is. Yeah. So you have to practice in a way that keeps you alive and you have to prepare. Go look at the space before everyone goes there. Be in the space, not just standing on the stage, be in the space, sitting on the stage, laying down on the stage. Be in the space, sitting in the chairs, not just in the front row. Be in the back row. When other people are doing their mic check or practicing on the stage, go to the back row. Check the acoustics. What does it sound like? These are all the things that you have to do to prepare yourself and to gain your confidence. Even if it's not the contest, you just have to go in there and present for your company. You're the one who has to represent your company. Go into that meeting room ahead of time. Sit in the chairs. Breathe it in. That's going to raise your level of confidence because you feel secure in that space. You know that space. I did that for the contest. I would go into those spaces the day before, the night before. I'm running through my speeches at all different volumes. I'm running through my speeches in a whisper because I can hear it in the sound. I could tell from the echo what the acoustics are like. I can tell which kinds of sounds the walls bounce back. Sometimes they're more for consonants. Sometimes they're stronger for vowels. You can tell, and you can adjust your speech for that. When I dropped my chair on my final speech, I knew exactly what that's what's going to sound. For my semifinal speech with the Oreo cookies, I knew exactly where the lighting was. There was a problem with the lighting. No one could tell, but there's only a few instruments. So these 3 lights and then these 3 lights, and the center is dark. The center at the front is dark. And if you stood there, your face would be in the dark. There's light on both sides, but not in front. So you have to find that darkness and then stand in your light. And I saw this when I was watching people do pitches, entrepreneurs ready to go in there and do their business pitch. There's a panel of multimillionaire angel investors ready to give you their money if you can just nail the pitch. I was there doing some research and I watched them and I thought they all stood in the dark. They stood center stage because they thought they were supposed to stand in the center. No, stand in the light. Because if they can't see you, then they can't understand. Test the microphone. Every microphone is different. Test the microphone to see how it works and then prepare for the worst. Prepare for what happens if that microphone doesn't work. If you watch my final speech, which you can see on YouTube, my microphone falls off. Most people don't know that happened. It fell off, but I was ready for it. I said, if it falls off, this is what I do. Maybe I lost 1 second. Maybe that's why I went over to. You prepare for what happens if your PowerPoint goes bad. You prepare for what happens if the microphone goes bad. Prepare for what happens if you twist your ankle. On those platforms, I knew exactly where the squeakies were. I knew exactly how to step where it wouldn't squeak. So that's what I say. If you're in contest, practice every day. Practice as many times as you can. Practice in different ways and prepare for that space so that you give yourself maximum opportunity to succeed.
Would you like to share with us some of your go-to resources? Like, this is something that I would do. This is something that I would refer to. This is like my Bible for going in for speech on the stage.
Here's the thing that I do that nobody ever believes me. I'm going to say this and you're going to go, I don't know about that. I find a piece of music that speaks to me. That's my inspiration for that speech. And each speech gets its own song. Even when I'm writing the speech, I play that song. And I usually write speeches not by my handwritten, but I write it in my head while I'm walking. I'll be walking, I'll be riding around, and I'm thinking of that speech. And I play that same song over and over. You know, you can tell there's going to be about 1,000 times I've listened to that song. And the rhythm, I find that the rhythm of that song dictates the rhythm of the speech. Some songs get louder and then softer at different times. It starts to lead you to creative choices in your speech. There may even be words in the song, lyrics that you can put into your speech. So find that song, and that becomes your inspiration. And then, of course, right before you give your speech, listen to some music to keep your mind focused. You have the perfect song. It's already there. It's ready to go. And it puts you right into the rhythm of what you're trying to say. And it becomes that touchstone of magic.
You listen to the lyrics, you listen to the rhythm, ups and downs in the song, and that is even before you've written the first word, the song is actually inspiring you.
Yes. And if you find that it's not working, then go find another song. Maybe that's the wrong song. I've found that I would have the speech up through district. And then after district, I changed the speech. I tweaked it. And maybe it's because I'm now going to an international audience. I had to shift it. And I find that the song I had doesn't work as well. Well, then you may have to go find another song. And that's okay too. Just so that you have something that helps you to understand in your heart what that message is. So that it's always inspiring you to be creative, but you're always pointing in the same direction. Because sometimes when you get creative, you can start going in all different directions. By saying, okay, it has to fit in this vein right here. So I can be creative, but I have to stay within the boundaries of the song.
What I learned is that you find the right song, you dance to the tune, no matter what the lyrics are. So, Fursey, any words of advice for the listeners of District 98 today that will make their speeches have a mic drop moment?
I think you always have to think about your audience. It has to be about your message. So don't think about your message as that repetitive line that you keep saying over and over again, because that's not necessarily what the message is, and that's not necessarily the best way to build your speech. If you're going to build your speech, know what your message is. One sentence, a shorter one, 5 to 8 words, short message. It doesn't have to be some catchphrase, but just know this is my message. This is what I want my audience to walk away with. This is my call to action. Build your speech around. Don't build your speech around this really cool story where you feel like you're expressing your heart. It's not as important, because you have to go from me to we. You have to transform. When you start speaking, you explore yourself as a caterpillar. You have to understand, to really be a good speaker, you got to make the jump. You got to make the jump to a butterfly. You've got to be ready to jump. You've got to make that leap. You got to transform from looking at that story from one side going, I see my story, I see my world, to, oh, that's how the audience sees it. This is what the audience sees. And sometimes all those details just don't matter. For example, a caterpillar is going, oh, I ate this tree. Oh, I ate this leaf. Oh, I ate that plant. The butterfly doesn't care what you ate. The butterfly says, hey, here's the transformation in your cocoon. And now here's how you fly. The audience wants to know, how do you fly?
We are all ready with our wings up held high.
There you go.
Before we conclude, do you have any questions for the two of us?
Yes. Akarshak, I was going to ask you, who invented liquid soap and why? And Meenakshi, I'm going to ask you, what's the best way to organize your sock drawer?
The best way to organize the sock drawer is you get those organizers with little boxes so that you can keep the pair together in one.
Okay. Just always wanted to ask that question.
The Google search I did is William Shepard invented the liquid soap, but I don't know the why to that question.
You know, in actuality, somebody did answer that for me. Soap starts out as liquid form. They actually put it into a solid form so that you could mobilize it, you could carry it.
Carry it.
Yeah, it's a bar of soap, right? You don't need to have a container. I don't necessarily have a question for you, but I do have a question for our audience. Are you ready to take flight? If you're ready to take flight, then you got to be ready to transform. Are you ready to go from me to we? You got to let go. The caterpillar has to let go. You have to let go. Make the transformation from me to we.
Wow, that's such an inspiring concluding remark. I don't think I can say any more to that.
I appreciate you two having me on. Thank you very much. It's always great to talk to people and inspire Toastmasters around the globe. That's what I live for as a coach. You know, I live for being able to say the right things to people to help them move to that next level. And that's what I do for my clients and Toastmasters.
Thank you so much for all your insightful messages, and thank you for your time. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.